Wesley Eugene here. I'm here with both Katrina Macdermid, author of Human-Centered Design for IT Service Management, and I'm also here with Mark Basham, CEO of Hit Global.
My pleasure to introduce David Ratcliffe. He's the president of Pink Elephant. I've known David for a long time. I've also known of your incredible company, Pink Elephant, and what your company and your team have done for IT service management. Absolutely, training is great, good investment. But what I found, and I think we've talked about this and Mark, that I don't know if I've been unfortunate in my career that I've worked for most part in IT organisations where IT service management had a lot of opportunities for improvement. What I'm saying was a very low maturity. Yeah. And you know yourself, Dave, we do maturity assessments. Very rarely does someone get over 1.5, 2 is good. That's reality. And so when you do training and you train, e.g. the service desks or level 1, level 2, they've got constraints. So constraints might be an outsourcer that you bound to SLAs and all this sort of stuff. And it just makes it really hard to what you learn in a classroom to apply to reality. That's my experience. And it's hard. Level 2, it sends a ticket back. All this behavioural stuff. And I guess what you're saying, David and Mark, it's about behaviour versus a framework, isn't it? But it's the realities of IT service management, and we talk about it in the book.
So if you want to talk a little bit about assessments, then we do a lot of those. Yeah. And in fact, it's increasing, which is just something I'd like to understand a little bit more.
Maturity assessments.
Yeah, we do maturity assessments and capability assessments. Okay. There's a difference. Yeah. Maturity is all about, are you prepared for delivering? Have you got everything you need to be able to deliver the service you've set out to do? Capability is actually, how are you doing? Yeah. How are you doing? Yeah. So you may want to do a maturity assessment first, and then after 6 or 12 months, you want to say, how have we actually been delivering this? Anyway, sorry about that little lecture. Point is, when we're doing assessments, what's the overall objective the organization's trying to achieve? Same as what we were talking about with training. Yeah. What's the CI? Why is it targeting this training? What we found is that there's 2 camps. There's organizations who just want to see a score and the score get better over time, which, again, it's a natural thing, you'd say commonsensically. If you've got better scores than last year, you must hopefully be doing something better, but I can't really put my finger on it, right? The second option is where we do the assessment and then we sit down, and this is what happens most often. We sit down with the key group of stakeholders and we say, look, here's the state of your industry right now. This is where you're at. Right. What do you think of this? What are your priorities? How are we going to move the goal? How are we going to make this better? Yeah. I don't do this work anymore. I used to do it 25 years ago, but I don't do it now. There's much smarter people working at Pink Elephant doing this. So the examples I give sometimes are a bit dated, but they just illustrate the point. So for many years, problem management was the least mature process. I did an analysis of hundreds of assessments a few years ago, and it came out an average of about 1.6 or something. Everything else was in the high 1 point somethings and even in the 2s and whatever. And over time, if you did multiple assessments with the improvement plan after each one, your scores would start to improve. So that's what organizations should be doing. Sitting down at the end of the assessment, looking at the results, saying, okay, do we care about that score? It's not high priority right now, that area. Minimal amount of transactions work. This over here, change failures, that causes a lot of outage for us, man. That's the reason we brought you in the first place, because we knew we were not very good at this. And it's just been proven. How do we fix this now? What do we do about this? And that's where we sit down and we go through with them opportunities for improvement, what the dependencies are. And it's not just a case of let's improve this. It's what do you have that's going to make that happen? Do people know why they're doing this? Is it some kind of training or awareness gap? Is it the tools that are out of sync? Is it the fact that there's another process which it's dependent upon that's dysfunctional? It's like, how long is a piece of string? There's so many different reasons why something doesn't work. And a skilled consultant who's seen it all before can start to identify, here's what I recommend you do.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where we're actually starting to see value coming out of the experienced person who maybe a few years ago did training every day of the week. Now we're putting that experience of working with customers and hearing every story and every opportunity for dysfunction becoming a tool to help us to help the next guy to improve.
So you've said in the last two sentences the word experience, albeit referring to people, experienced people. I think this is probably an opportunity to circle back to experience and experience management.
100%.
Because all the training that has been going on in our industry, service management, for the last 30 years, has broadly been the same stuff. It's trying to tick the same boxes. The capability assessments, the maturity assessments, we've been measuring the same things. What we haven't done enough of in and I would say our HIT Global view, is experience management and thinking about user experience in particular. And so the shift that HIT Global's bringing, and I want to
Are we talking about the same thing when we say experience?
I think not, and that's where I'm coming from.
Right, because when I talk about experience, I'm talking about what the person gives.
I know you are. You're talking about individuals' experience in terms of expertise.
What you're talking about is what somebody receives.
I'm talking about outcomes. Yeah, the experience of a service, the experience of, and that's what that's the lens that we are bringing to the industry. And that's the lens that I think is starting to shift the conversation. Katrina's just written a second new book. The first one, 3-4 years ago, I think it was first published, introduced a concept of user experience and human-centered design to IT service management. That has become now, I would suggest, almost accepted wisdom. So the second book, and it is now focused very much on how you create a better experience for users and the activities that we as IT people, IT practitioners can adopt and work through in order to drive better user experience and better outcomes as a result of it. And wasn't planning on triangulating back to the question you asked me right at the beginning, which was around investment and justification and stuff.
Yeah.
But to my mind, that's the key anchor point. By creating better user experiences, you create better business experiences, better customer experiences, and ultimately better performing businesses, better performing teams.
Yeah. When I reflect back on my career, Mark, what I find is that, ironically, the easiest way to get investment in training and consulting was due to a failed experience or a disrupted experience or some experience that fell apart. And at that point, every self-respecting CIO wants to retain their job. And they're like, okay, we just need this thing fixed. This cannot happen again. My user base cannot experience this thing, whatever that was. So please, let me get on the 911, let me call Pink Elephant, let me call HIT Global, let me call people to help fix this thing so that my user base, my employees, my VIPs never experience what they have just experienced again.
But it brings me back, Dave, back to what you were saying initially. And I might have picked up the wrong book, but when I was studying, and it's in my first book, people challenged me and say, oh, we always had the people in IT service management. But the book I picked up we talked about people, process, products, and was that it? Yep. And experience was experience as in of the IT professional. How much were they certified? How much experience did they have? It never talked about...
I think that's what David's saying.
Exactly. And that's when people challenge me, we always talked about people. It didn't really. From a human-centered design lens, I don't think service management really did. It as I said, it talked about the people in the organisation with the experience they have. Did I pick up the wrong version of the book?
I don't know if you're maybe not given a little bit of credit that I think is deserved with the original service management. I'll even go back to before I learned about formal service management. I was hired in the consulting and training world to teach courses to people in IT. And my first experience was very technical IBM mainframe stuff. So we can forget about that. But I moved on to teaching customer service skills, like telephone skills for help desk analysts, and teaching them how to empathize with the customer, teaching them what was the definition of good service. So that kind of started.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That started to inform the movement around my mentor Malcolm Fry's seminal books on the service culture, we called it. Him and his editor Tony Probert called the 4 books that Malcolm wrote the service culture, and we never used the word service in that type of context before. It's all about functional stuff. How do you record incidents? How do you move things along the pipeline? And that was something which informed the ITIL movement in the mid-1980s. And it was originally called the Government IT Infrastructure Management Method. Horrible acronym, GITM. Actually, funny acronym.
Right? I think it might work today.
Government. Yeah, but because it was all sponsored by the government, they put the word government in there. But before it came to fruition and was published, because of the likes of British Airways and Legal and General Insurance Company and all the rest of them who were not government, it somehow got renamed overnight to ITIL, IT Infrastructure Library, not the IT Service Library.
Right.
And that name stuck forever. And now it's just become not an acronym, it's just a word, which I think is probably a good idea, because otherwise you keep getting pulled back into infrastructure library. It's not about infrastructure. There were books, the first 44 books. There was a book, I think it was about 64 pages long, which was all about different types of cabling infrastructures.
Wow.
There was another book on fire protection systems. None of this had anything to do with service. It was about infrastructure. But then version 2 was throwing away some of that, or putting it to one side, not throwing it away, because that sort of technology focus becomes redundant after a while. If you're an Apple user, you know very much what I'm saying about cabling infrastructures. They change with every new product, right? Anyway, the next thing that happened was we got this service thinking with business relationship management, which was part of the business perspective books, which were the first strategic books in the library. So we gradually were introducing elements of service and understanding of treating people respectfully, but it was not, I would say, some of my co-workers of those days might vehemently disagree, but I would say probably not very consciously the way you have gone to it very proactively. These were just things that were happening. So the evolution of the amoebas coming together and creating multi-cell systems, things were starting to happen by accident, I would say by human nature.
Maybe because you made it more efficient, you could move on to something else. It did its job. Do you know what I mean? The technology was stable and...
So we talked about service. We talked about service level agreements. Again, just a very basic tool which never really worked. You know, when we spent years talking about service level agreements, and to me it never really worked because there was always exceptions. It was just a world full of exceptions.
Right.
That service level that you've defined works fine.
It's kept a lot of lawyers
very busy. It works fine at 9:30 on a Monday morning, but at 5:05 on a Friday, is a whole different set of priorities.
That is another podcast. I've never heard you say that, Dave, in all the years I've known you, that it didn't really work. And it's interesting because there are metrics that were used to say for good or bad.
It's embedded so deeply.
There's elements, let's not go too far. There's still some value there, but it was never complete. It was never holistic. Didn't cover for every eventuality. The best example is when my printer's not working, I'll stand in line and I'll wait until my priority gets up there to get attention. The CIO's printer's not working.
Yeah.
That happens right away. And I'd have to explain this to people to say, so you think that's unfair, do you? Yeah, because I can't do my work, but my boss gets his work, she gets her work fixed straight away. I said, yeah, but what is actually she doing? Right?
This is definitely another podcast.
That's dangerous.
I disagree, and Wes knows I disagree with that. I don't agree with...
But when you've got to make decisions and prioritize...
I agree.
Things go ahead of other things, right?
Entitlement.
I'm not saying in every instance.
Not in every instance.
You're framing it as a criticism because why does your boss get better treatment? It might not be just because she's your boss.
Yeah.
It may be because of what she's doing.
And that's the point. It should be a conscious and deliberate
so
decision.
Therefore the parameters that you put in a service level agreement have got to cater for all of these little exceptions, which becomes like tiresomely impossible to do.
Sure.
But all we have left with is something very general that could help in 80% of the time. Right. How many incidents did we have last week? How many incidents did we have this week? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What's our target? And I always used to have fun with students and say things like, so you have a target for failure? Because you're measuring how many failures you have and you've got a target.
Well done. Yeah.
So that there's a target. So do you punish yourself if you don't achieve the target of how many failures? So it's the thinking was not very sophisticated. Yeah. My point is it was a nice idea.
Yeah.
But the application of it, there you go. Theory. We teach people theory. The book says this. In practice, though, how helpful is it really?
Exactly. As I said earlier, Dave, all the constraints of reality of service management. Yeah. So I think
that's a long one.
Yeah. It's a fascinating conversation. Perhaps we land the plane with a thought, right? We're seeing a lot of things emerging right now. On the one end, we've talked about AI. We've talked about how the training landscape is shifting from where it used to be with a more industrial focus to where it matured to with a service and a more experienced focus. One of the things I think we should tee up and address as well is like the movement beyond IT to the enterprise when we're thinking about enterprise service management so we've got these different forces. We have AI, we have this emerging embrace of enterprise service management, and I know there's a set of books that I'm familiar with, integrated ITSM, that I think goes away towards helping with that. But how should we think about this all, and how, if there are any closing thoughts to land this in this moment?
Can I answer that? Being very selfish.
Sure.
And just thinking about myself.
Please.
Which is what selfish is, I think. I've had that question brought up a few times about enterprise service management over the years, gone back many years. I don't have time for that. That's my selfish answer.
Okay.
I'm so preoccupied and still trying to make service management work in IT.
Yes, I'm with you, David. Right? I am with you.
The idea of, and this was one of the initiatives that was discussed. I've got to be careful how far I go with this, but I do know that in recent years, the folks who managed the most prevalent ITSM framework wanted to take it in that direction.
Yeah. I
disagreed, and I think a couple other people did as well, but I was almost expecting to see some of that come out in the recent update. But maybe there's an application in the enterprise for these principles. But when I've just been talking about service level agreements and service level management being a challenge to implement within IT, how's that going to work in the enterprise when we still got gaps to fill in and we're not really considering every single exception? So that's somebody for the next generation. Not something that I have a lot of motivation to do. We have talked occasionally with customers who will say things like, our HR department wants to learn from what we're doing in IT and apply these principles in things like onboarding new staff, right?
Yeah.
Which has a bit of an IT element to it, but there's other things as well. Yeah. That's just a natural thing, that you will use knowledge that comes from wherever you find it, that you repurpose knowledge. But so that thing, I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. You were kind enough to mention integrated ITSM, which Pink Elephant co-developed with professional designations. That's not meant to be an alternative framework. It's actually meant to be some detail as to how you work with the frameworks. So when you look at the core book, there's 5 books, but one of them is the core book. It's called Executing Integrated ITSM. It actually goes into the nitty-gritty details of what is a process. It starts with a purpose, set of objectives and then the various resources and the outputs, how do you actually set that up? How do you actually define it and create a process and make it and then work with it? Right now, the other models that we looked at, frameworks for ITSM, it's more of a very big conceptual model where everything's connected together. You have a service value chain of in a life cycle of what do you do when, depending on which versions of the service management framework you're on. There's all of these very interconnected strategic approaches, which on their own have some value for sure.
Yeah.
But when I'm hired out of school and I'm in my first job and maybe I'm in support or I'm in some kind of network management role and I'm trying to understand how do I achieve the service levels my boss says are very important, I don't know how to do my job. There's no guidance there. I'm told about what's the definition of an incident and a problem and a change, but beyond that, how do you categorize them? How do you prioritize? What do I learn there? The idea of a priority system of urgency and impact, but there's still other exceptions like I talked about earlier that don't really fit into this model. There's a lot to learn at the operational level.
Absolutely.
So that's what integrated ITSM does. And we're very proud of it. We think, and everybody who's seen it thinks it's just, this is what we've been waiting for.
We certainly hear good things about it. The people who've
amazing.
But you know, you can take a horse to water, but so when we talk about, hey, take a look at this, we try to make it easy for people to refer to. We've developed some training courses. We're not a registered charity. We have to make a living. But we're never going to get rich selling books, Katrina, I don't think.
Oh, wait.
Unless you're John Grisham or Katrina Macdermid, you're never going to get rich writing books.
Bless you.
We do the training and we do the consulting as well, right? Yeah. And of course, we talk about it at our big annual conference a lot.
Yeah.
But
if I can say, what you've created in your essentials, Dave, is what is needed for service management. Because I think essentially service management is in the operations. How do you enable business outcomes?
It's execution.
Exactly. And as the most prevalent framework doesn't really tell us how to do that.
Yeah, it tells you what. The frameworks say, here's what you should be paying attention to, but it doesn't say, how do you do it?
Yeah. How do I change that nut and bolt? And
I also appreciate about integrated ITSM is that its approach is that of a unifier. So it's not really... It's saying bring whatever other compatible frameworks need.
That's where the word integrated comes in.
And I think that's quite powerful because I've lived in the framework wars.
Yeah.
Have architect X arguing for this, architect Y arguing for that, and you get nowhere fast.
But not everything is a framework.
Right.
It's an overused word. Yeah. Anything that's like an acronym or a short little made-up word suddenly is a framework. And not everything is a framework.
Right.
For example, things like, say, lean and the way it is applied in IT, what we call lean IT,
right,
which talks about how you can analyze a process and identify opportunities for efficiency and to eliminate waste. That's got a role to play in IT service management. It's not a framework for service management. It's just a little point solution that has a lot of applications. Same with Agile. When you're going to develop stuff in an Agile way, you're going to get some benefits. I won't explain in great detail what they are, but it's not a framework. It's a set of practices that can help you get the work done more efficiently and more reliably, right? And then you've got other bigger frameworks, stuff like COBIT, stuff like ITIL, et cetera, et cetera. But integrated ITSM is not a framework. It's just a set of practices that can help you, whichever framework you decide you want to work to.
Yeah.
And right now, I think if I was a CIO, I'm not so sure I'd be lining up with any particular framework.
Right.
I'd be looking at somebody coming in and saying, where are your strengths? Well done. Where are your weaknesses and gaps?
Yeah.
What can we do about that? And maybe there's some guidance we can have with some common language, which we can draw from here, there, or wherever, but not to try and implement end-to-end this life cycle solution or this service value chain solution, necessary focus solution.
You say if you were a CIO, I think more and more CIOs are taking exactly that approach, David. I think there's more and more who are just stepping back from formal framework adoption and they're looking now just to go deliver and great services and great experiences, pulling what they consider to be the best.
Well, that all started at a time when we had a great vacuum, right? We had a great vacuum in knowledge of how we do things. Now that vacuum has been replaced with all of this chaos,
right?
Which is supposed to be order,
right?
But it's people saying we use COVID for this, we use ITIL for that. And by the way, because of our corporate goals, we have to get ISO 20000 certified as well.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of complicated world complexity that we're living in.
Yeah. So I would say in wrapping up, right? Like, I'm just very curious. Perhaps one way to put a fine point on it is we're here at Pink 26. We're in 2026. What is your highest hope and aspiration? I'll start with you, David, and then Mark and Kat. What's your highest hope and aspiration for IT service management in this year?
We've got 1 minute left each.
I would say don't forget the universal truths. And the universal truth for me is all around leadership. Leadership being making sure people understand very clearly what they're supposed to be doing, helping to remove the obstacles out of their way, which is traditional leadership. But it's not all down to the one person you might look to as being your leader. The universal truth for me is that we all have to demonstrate the right kind of behaviors to fit within a corporate culture or a network of people working together where we're mutually supportive, each providing leadership to ourselves and to our co-workers. And that's got nothing to do with whether we've just entered the world of mobile computing or we've just entered the world of AI. It's all about people knowing where do they fit in and how do they contribute. And so that universal truth is empathic leadership, making sure you understand where you fit in, what you're supposed to be doing, how you can help everyone around you. Even if it's your first day on the job and you've just gone through the orientation of your business and you go into the workplace with the folks who've been working there for a year or two, you can help them by reminding them of what you just learned. What are our business objectives? What is our vision and our mission? Why is that important? And how does it guide us? You don't have to be the boss to talk about this stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mark?
User experience. I think continued focus. I want to see this movement continue and to continue to drive through organizations, which is what we're seeing. So a focus on user experience drives an improvement in everybody's efficiency, everybody's activity, and the outcomes that people are all driving, which ultimately results in those stronger business performance. And that connection is what's being seen. Status, perception of IT as a function is improved, and that means that the business is investing more and more in those important things, which is the space that we live in, IT service management, IT services, and ultimately human experience.
Fantastic. Kat?
Oh, I'm going to be sarcastic. That we're still not talking what's the difference between an incident and a service request. Because those conversations are still happening. Yeah, so to be serious, really, I think this is a really great opportunity for IT professionals to upskill in different skills, make operations more efficient and integrated, and as Mark said, more experience-driven.
Beautiful. So we've got empathic leadership, we've got a continued focus on the user experience, and we have, honestly, getting brilliant on the basics. Let's not forget that there's still quite a lot of work to do with those foundational skills. This has been an incredible conversation.
Yeah, edit this.
Absolutely. And my hope is, of course, that the industry continues to evolve. I am excited about this embrace of our own humanity as we're juggling the raucous advance of technology, that we are most definitively humans in a human experience, managing a digital enterprise. And I think that's good for now.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.